Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh and a very good morning. Welcome to our 22nd webinar series, Captain of Industry, brought to you by Faculty of Engineering, UTM Johor Bahru. We are initiating university-industry collaboration during Recovery Movement Control Order, RMCO, to have a platform with our Captain of Industry to share their thoughts, way forward and challenges during post-COVID-19. Now we are streaming live from Facebook, Faculty of Engineering, UTM. Today, we would like to welcome Yang Berbahagia, Mr. Suresh Kumar Perabala, Vice President Intel Corporation, with his interesting topic today, Adapting to Win in the Post-COVID19 Technology Arena. Without further ado, I would like to invite Yang Berusaha Professor Dato Engineer Dr. Muhammad Rafiq bin Dato Abdul Kadir, Dean, Faculty of Engineering, UTM, to introduce our captain today. Over to you, Dato.
Thank you so much, Murni. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to our 22nd UTM Engineering Captain of Industry webinar series. My name is Muhammad Rafiq and I am the Dean of Engineering, University Technology Malaysia. Today it is my utmost pleasure to welcome Mr. Suresh Kumar Perabala from Intel Corporation. A bit about our presenter today. Suresh Kumar Perabala Chandra Das is Vice President in the Client Engineering Group and General Manager of Chipset Silicon Design in Malaysia at Intel Corporation. He leads the teams dedicated to Structural Physical Design Engineering and Design for Test, DFT, within the Chipset Silicon Group. His current focus is managing hardware design for the development of next-generation client and server chipsets and system-on-chip SoC products manufactured on Intel and external foundry processes. Das also serves as General Manager of the Intel Malaysia Design Center in Penang, a large engineering organization responsible for providing products to multiple Intel engineering groups and business units. He has spent more than 20 years at the Design and Development Center, starting his career there in 1996, and has managed the center since 2018. Besides overseeing the center and the engineering teams working there, Das works extensively with the external ecosystem, including universities, various government bodies, and the industry. Das holds a bachelor's degree in Electrical and Electronics Engineering from the University Science Malaysia in Penang and an MBA degree from the University of South Australia. Okay, that's a brief biography of our guest speaker today. Here now is Mr. Suresh Kumar Perabala, Vice President Intel Corporation, with a talk entitled Adapting to Win in the Post-COVID-19 Technology Arena. Mr. Suresh, over to you.
All right, good morning, everyone. My sincere thanks to Professor Dato Dr. Muhammad Rafiq and Puan Murni for the very kind introduction. I also want to thank UTM for the opportunity to speak at your webinar series. I believe that what you are doing here as an effort to keep us all connected is during this COVID-19 pandemic is a very commendable effort. And as you had mentioned, UTM and Intel have been collaborating for a long time. So I see this as another special day where we further extend that collaboration, right? So the talk today is really going to cover the what are the challenges created by the COVID-19 situation, and then post COVID-19. We don't know how long we're going to remain in this situation, but what does this crisis, besides the challenges, also the opportunities that it creates, both for technology companies as well as for individuals who are willing to adapt and change in order to win or come out winning from this situation, right? So I will start by covering a little bit on the what Intel's purpose and history and our products, and then also a little bit of the history of Intel Malaysia that I'd like to share with you. And then we will go on to discuss more specifically what the business trends look like, what the technology trends look like, and then also I want to finish by talking a little bit about especially since some of your audience are your university students. We want to cover the aspects of what are the new trends in learning that we feel you should be adapting to, right? So this is Intel's purpose, right? Which is to create world-changing technology that enriches the lives of every person on Earth. So we believe we have the resources, the technology, and the scale to make an impact on everybody on the planet, right? And this is our aspiration and our goal. And I'll share with you or specifically how we plan to go about doing that, right? So if you look at Intel, in fact, when you talk to many people, the main thing that comes to mind is when people think of Intel is, oh, it's that PC company, right? Intel Inside. What does what else does Intel do? We commonly get asked by people who are outside the tech industry. Now, a few years ago, we already started going from PC, meaning like the personal computer, like the client, the desktop in the house and in the businesses, to data center and cloud, right? But today, what we are preparing for is a world in which data drives a revolution where decision making needs to happen at the very edge, right? Where a decision needs to be made quickly and in a timely manner, and therefore the data cannot sit on either a computer or a mobile device or on the cloud, but needs to be everywhere, right? And to this end, we're actually looking at a few major areas, right? So if you look at the top right-hand corner of the infographic here, a few key trends, right? So you see autonomous driving, you see AI, you see connectivity, the Internet of Things, 5G, besides the PC and the data center, right? And we've been investing for the last few years. I will share what kind of products we have on the horizon, right? To essentially enable the world to innovate in all of these new emerging areas. Now, a few key technology inflection points that we see on the horizon, right, that will redefine the value of data, right? One of those big areas is artificial intelligence, or AI and machine learning, which we are already seeing today, right? Almost across the board, facial recognition, decision-making tools, machines that are able to make increasingly complex decisions that almost mimic the human brain, right? That is one area of evolution. The other is 5G and the network, where the reach of data to every person on the planet is expected to expand exponentially. And lastly, the intelligent age, which includes the Internet of Things, machine-to-machine communication, the Industrial Revolution 4.0. And what we see is any company or individual who's able to leverage these technological inflections will be poised to not only help mankind but also come out winning through this revolution. Next, I want to share with you a little bit on our product portfolio, right? Because we frequently get asked, if you look at this graphic, you will see that many people know us for the core, right? The Xeons, the Core i3, i5, i7. No doubt, this is a central part of our business. In fact, I'm personally very involved in the chipset area, right? Which is part of what we have in the platform products, right? What enables your laptop, your mobile, your servers, all of that, right? Now, on top of that, if you look on the left side, we have technologies that are related to AI. Intel Myriad, Mobile Eye, Habana is actually a neural network on a chip, right? And similarly, the FPGAs that we have actually accelerators, right? They sit on data centers, they sit on the edge, they sit on the networks, and they help accelerate. These are very unique IPs and technologies that are far different from the usual CPU, GPU that we produce. And then besides that, we also have connectivity, right? Wi-Fi is on a Series 6 now. If you remember, historically, we have been involved in bringing Wi-Fi to the world through Centrino. But today we are in Series 6, right? Which is faster and better, stable, low power connections. Then the next one is Intel NUC, right? This is actually a next unit of computing where by connecting a small device into the back of a display or monitor, you can actually convert these systems into intelligent displays or even a full-blown compute system, right? And then similarly on memory and storage, we also have products that SSDs, right? We have 3D NAND technology and SSD technology. And Intel actually participates in all of these areas. And we believe that collectively, this portfolio will poise us to win. Now, moving on a little bit to the history specifically to Malaysia, right? So this is several pictures that I got from the archives. The team that helped me put this foils together helped me to pull up some very interesting pictures, right? So in 1972, Penang was embarking on setting up a free trade zone, right? And the then Chief Minister Tun Lim Chong Yu had mooted an idea to establish this free trade zone. And in this picture, you actually see one of the founding members of Intel, Mr. Andy Grove, talking to the Chief Minister and discussing a $2 million electronic plant investment, right? And on the right, you can see the two pictures here. The person on the right with the spectacles and the mustache is actually Andy Grove, right? One of our founders who had, said only the paranoid survive and been a catalyst for the growth of the company. This is actually him standing in Bayan Lepas. You can see the mud on the ground. This was a site that was chosen to set up the first Intel plant, right? And you can see similarly this at the bottom there, the car that is stuck in the mud is the car that they came in, right? So fortunately, they persevered through the mud. You can see them trying to get the car out of the mud. But this was the scenario, and later I'll share with you where we have come from starting in 1972, right? So this is a bit of a history lesson on how Intel started in Penang. Now next, this is Intel today. So if you recall, we started with a $2 million investment, but 48 years later, we actually have 10,000 highly skilled Malaysians working for Intel. And over the generations, $6 billion in investment in both infrastructure and high-tech volume manufacturing, right, has occurred since that time. And we have a very proud legacy, right? We started with manufacturing, assembly, and test in 1972, but we have now gone on beyond assembly and manufacturing. Now, the assembly and manufacturing itself is a lot more sophisticated and technologically advanced today. But on top of that, we have added, an R&D capability, design and development capability, which happened, in 1991 when the leaders of the manufacturing organization wanted to bring this R&D capability here, and they had picked some of the best engineers to go and learn from both the US and Japan, where Intel had design centers, to go and pick up this knowledge and come back and form the nucleus of a design group, right? So that was in 1991. And then in 1996, we established a Kulim campus. And then in 2004, shared services, this is finance, IT, HR, all of these services, the global services organizations also came in 2004. And then another important thing that happened, particularly important from a design and development capability, was the acquisition of Altera, which subsequently became our programmable solutions group at Intel, right? Which expanded the R&D capability in Malaysia, right, for Intel. Now, one interesting fact is also that back in 1975. 3 years after we had established the assembly manufacturing plant, we actually had the whole plant actually burned to the ground in 1975. But through salvaging the equipment and also with the help of the other tenants in the FTZ, we were actually able to resume operations the very next day. So you can see from historically over the 48 years, we've had many obstacles, many challenges, but the Malaysian spirit of cooperation and resilience has shone through to help us grow from a small operation to what it is today. Now, this is a little bit on the design and development evolution, right? So back in 1991, as I mentioned, there was, I believe, about 10 or even less than 10 engineers that were chosen to go and learn design and come back and start the design center. And then around 1996, we were still doing microcontrollers, as Prof. Rafiq had mentioned. I joined around 1996, and we had about 100 engineers at the time. And we were doing microcontrollers. Now, the big inflection point was when we started to do chipset and CPU design in the mid to 1990s. We were quickly moving into the mainstream of what Intel's business was, which is, the computers, right? So you could see that during that rapid time of growth from 1996 to the mid 2000s, we had gone from 100 to 1,000 engineers, right? From that 1,000, so we had the big CPU and chipset. We ultimately then started to build our own IPs here, and then we expanded in 2014ish. We started to do IoT work, right? Both engineering as well as solutions and customer facing capabilities. And then in 2016, the FPGA technologies came in, and you can see we were already tripping 2,000. And then more recently, we've got memory, 5G, all of the inflection point aspects that I mentioned, right? 3D crosspoint and external foundries. So technical competency as well has been growing and growing. From starting from doing products where we are doing cost optimization. Today we build a lot of the mainstream the computers that you buy today, that a laptop, a desktop, the things that are enabling us to participate today in these forums, to learn online and have this immersive experience. There are 4,000 Malaysian engineers also contributing to this capability today, right? Next, so I want to talk a little bit on the future trends, right, which was the core of our talk, right? So, what do I see as trends, right? And more importantly, what those trends mean in terms of opportunities for technology, right? So, firstly, work, right? So, when COVID-19 hit us, we were as surprised as everyone else on what this means for the tech industry, right? There were supply chain disruptions everywhere. We were told to work from home. So if you look at the remote work, we quickly went from expecting everybody to be on site working in the company, because we believed that that was the most collaborative environment, face to face, engineers being in a room creating solutions together, to having to work remotely, right? So this was a big change for us. Now, more importantly, for manufacturing in particular, we had to be flexible and adapt to the new SOPs, right? So in order to keep manufacturing going, we need a minimum crew to be on site, right, to manage the machine and the automation. So in that aspect, we had to work in collaboration with the government agencies, right? As they were drawing up the SOPs, we were also working hand in hand with them to figure out how to implement the processes and keep our production running, while topmost priority for us was to make sure the employees are safe at all times, right? So we had to do that. And also the other aspect of this is, how did we have to digitize everything, right? In the past, where you will have forms and documents to sign on your table, we had to go and figure out how do we transmit this, DocuSign, all of those things that usually you use for banking or a specific area. We were quickly able to adapt that and digitize all of our work, right? Design and development in particular, and also the service sectors, actually found that we could be productive while being at home, right? So this was one of the big learnings. I personally also used to think that, you know, the best output is when you're at home, but we have proven that you know, with the right flexibility allowed by the leadership and management, and the flexibility on the employee side as well, there is a huge potential here in order to remain productive, right? In spite of us, many of us now working from home. The other aspect we discovered is also that, you know, our early investments in digital technology, in IT, you know, infrastructure to be able to do remote debugging, you know, what we had created for customers, an ability to remote login from another site or country, to work on a product that is sitting, or a platform that is sitting physically in our labs, was quickly transformed into a capability where now the engineers are at home and the minimum crew is in the lab, but everybody else can log in and get work done. Right, so we actually found that to be a wonderful return on our early investments for something that we had did for a different purpose, but we were able to adapt flexibly. Right. The next aspect is for the individual, right? So at the individual level, for many of us, you know, going to work is not just, especially in high tech, it's not just a workplace. A lot of us say we call it our second home, right? um, we interact socially. You know, it's flexi work environment, so people stop, have a coffee break, discuss ideas, get creative, and then go back to their tables, right? So the ability for both leaders, managers, and the engineers within their peers to connect with each other was initially hampered, right? And we had to find new ways. We actually did team building events online. We adapted all these new technologies on Teams and Zoom and Skype in order to do these things. And in the past, when we are doing a team event, there will be snacks and coffee and all of that. And we are wondering, how do we adapt this today? And we were actually able to get people to order online on all the various platforms, right? Food ordering, getting a food panda or grab, to get your food in, and expense electronically. So we would actually be in a video conference with multiple people all dialed in. We learned to play online games for team building instead of the usual, you take a day or half a day out to go and play in a field, right? So adaptability has been fantastic. I feel like across all platforms, right, including for, you know, when I talk about resiliency, many people had to learn through YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn how to repair things themselves, right? There are many instances where in the past you would call a technician to come in. Because of the MCO, you can't get somebody in. So one of the positives of this is, instead of replacing items, we found more and more people were repairing and learning things through online platforms, right? Schools and learning organizations also very quickly adapted. I think for those of you who have you know, people at home who are learners and students, I'm sure you had a fun time trying to adapt between you know, trying to get your work done. And many of our team members were going through the same thing. How do you get work done, be productive, while also making sure your children are learning online, right? Which was a big challenge in the beginning. But slowly people have started to get into the rhythm of how to work. And of course, um, there were some very interesting interactions, I'm sure, and challenging interactions at home for all of you, as you try to debate, you know, who is using up the internet bandwidth, or why is everything slowing down, or who gets to use the device. But I believe slowly and quickly we have adapted to the environment, right? And again, this drives the need for new platforms, new ideas, and new technologies. The next one I want to talk on what it means for businesses, right? So businesses had to adapt to selling and buying online, right? The mechanisms for purchasing something online, for tracking the delivery of a product or service on its way to the end consumer, as well as I think another big area is the secure transaction of financial instruments, right? For example, how do you pay online? I know many people, friends and family who were uncomfortable at the beginning doing shopping online or making payments online, who had to adapt because the MCO forced all of us to adapt the new ways of doing things, right? Similarly, there is also a cost awareness. We also noticed that there's an opportunity in terms of cost, right? Both businesses and individuals looking at the uncertainty of the future were being very careful about how they're spending the money, right? And there was a cost awareness factor, which again drove opportunities, right? It's a lot easier to compare online when you're purchasing something versus having to go shop by shop. Similarly, we saw like the contactless aspects. Uh, we expect that it will drive more innovation, right? There should be products and services that can come online. Everything from being able to open a door in a public transportation system without touching it, dispensers for hygiene. All of these actually create new capabilities for both human beings and for IoT. The next aspect, right? So if you look at why we are discussing this, the underlying um, infrastructure that helps create these opportunities and to help us overcome the challenges is actually technology, right? So if you look at, if you're buying something online, that transaction is happening in a cloud somewhere, right? A lot of the online stores, the ability to manage the supply chain, the ability to put products online, all of that is managed through big data, and AI is also in the background helping to decide what the consumer is likely to buy, what is in stock. So if you look at the end-to-end spectrum, you can see that for everything from work to the individual to the business, technology is the foundational element that is enabling us to stay connected, and to some extent to stay alive, right? Now, a little bit on specific to Intel, right? So some of the things we have done as a company is actually to both globally and locally. We've actually been working with the frontliners to accelerate, for example, the R&D around COVID's access. So, for example, like I'll start with the most basic thing is from a survival perspective. We have actually donated more than 1 million personal protective equipment to healthcare workers, right? Locally, we have gone out to the hospitals, to the frontliners, the police, and all of the service organizations to see how to help in terms of providing PPE, right? Both in Kulim and in Penang, as well as in Kuala Lumpur. We've had volunteers go all the way from here because we had been preparing for this and had the supplies to be able to help out, right? The next thing we're doing is also providing free access to our IP. So there is an initiative globally that Intel has signed up to, where for COVID researchers, we're giving access to our IP, our patents, in order to accelerate the ability to find a vaccine, a cure, as well as in all areas, the ability to convert very quickly a normal hospital facility into a critical care or ICU unit to keep people alive. These are the areas where we have technology assets, and we're sharing that openly through this initiative. We've also invested $100 million worldwide to support our employees. So one of the things we realized is the work from home situation is an opportunity, but at the same time, for many of our employees, we do not have the basic facilities. You may need a larger monitor, a keyboard, an ergonomic chair. And this is one of those areas where we are spending the money to make sure that people have the right facilities to be able to work from home comfortably. Right? Again, another $50 million in the Intel pandemic response technology initiatives, telemedicine, critical care research, and also 10 million in relief efforts. Right? So you can see across all of these areas, we are engaged with the community. In specific to our local operations, we are working very closely with both the state government and the federal government to ensure SOPs are complied with, while at the same time making sure that we are meeting our commitments to our customers up to 90% and above. We've stayed on time in terms of our commitments, right? In spite of the MCO. Now, in terms of trends in learning, right? This is where we see, as we look to hire talent, right? For example, from UTM, from the universities, or even from outside, one of the trends we see in learning is that the fact that we're all working remotely now means that the skills of communicating and collaborating online have become all the more important, because you no longer have the benefit of body language or trying to see when somebody is upset or what they are, what their emotions are, right? So besides using social media to interact with your friends and family, also learn the skills from a professional perspective or the student teacher interaction, how to use these tools to communicate and collaborate in a most effective way, right? Because we do think that this is the future, and that this is going to be an asset for those who are comfortable in doing these things online. The next aspect is to learn all the time, right? I mentioned YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and all, right? So for us, one of the things we do is for LinkedIn Learning and all, we've made these tools available to our employees, right? We fund this, and I encourage the students also to go tap on these capabilities out there. It's a wonderful investment. I actually encourage you to, besides spending money on entertainment and all the other good things in life, also consider spending your money on subscriptions, right? Whether it's an Audible subscription, Kindle learning tools, right? There are so many training providers today. And the beauty of this is you don't have to, in the past, you have to say, hey, can I afford the time away from my studies or away from my work to spend a week in class or even a day, right? But today you actually have a capability where if you have half an hour or an hour today, you can do part of it and learn at your own pace through these online mechanisms. So again, I see this as a beautiful revolution, right? In the past, and by the way, the beauty of this is these platforms existed before, but the adoption has accelerated so quickly through the fact that the pandemic is upon us. Right? So again, I encourage you to make use of that facility. Next, also, as I was speaking to the faculty members, and in fact, both UTM and everywhere else, one of the things we always emphasize is, besides the strong GPA, right? Don't get me wrong. I mean, a good GPA is wonderful. It shows that you've applied yourself, you're academically brilliant. But more and more, we are seeing aspects of EQ and social intelligence, sometimes also called SQ, is an equally important element, and it's a strong predictor of the future success of a person, right? Going from an engineer to a team lead position and so on to future leadership positions, right? Again, if you have an opportunity, and the good news is these aspects are things that you can train, right? You can learn through experience. So where there are opportunities for you to lead a team or to do a co-curricular activity or participate in an organization organizing events and all, take those opportunities, because through learning to collaborate with other team members, you are actually building these strong skills for your future. Next, I want to talk about software and hardware, right? So this is another trend. When I was graduating, in fact, even before my graduation, when we were picking electives, it was a very difficult decision for an engineer to decide whether you want to be a software engineer or do you want to be a VLSI engineer or computer or communications or power and all. Increasingly, what we see is the best engineers are aware of both aspects. They actually know how software and hardware work together, right? So whether it is to create new ideas or to debug a problem, an existing hardware or design is already there on a platform, and you're trying to figure out what is going on. The best engineers are actually ones who can converge the knowledge from both of these aspects, right? So one of the initiatives we are doing within our design and capability is to push harder, right, on the software aspects, because we want to make sure that this convergence is understood, and we are poised to take those opportunities. Right. Then the next piece of this is we talked about how trends are changing rapidly, right? But at the same time, while we talked about what we believe is the future, what are the trends, where are the opportunities for to apply, say, for example, 5G and IoT and AI, we also realize that technology moves at a very rapid pace, right? So what we predict as online learning and all of these aspects that you see in front of you today could also very quickly change in the next month, in the next 6 months, in the next year. The world could again look very different. Perhaps we'll all be back in offices. Perhaps the work from home will extend indefinitely, right? So the point of this aspect that I wanted to discuss is just prepare to change, but also prepare to change quickly, right? You will likely need to change again and again many times in the next few years, right? Now moving on. Now in summary, I one of the reasons why I say predict the future, as I mentioned, right, you don't know what is going to happen, but by the time you know the correct answer, if you predict the future, and by the time the answer is obvious to you, it is usually too late, right? Other disruptors and innovators have already been ahead of you or gotten ahead of you in terms of leaping on the opportunity, which is why we feel that it's important to predict, because at the very minimum, you may be right half of the time, which is still better than sitting back, right? So this is where I encourage the students and everybody out there to look, observe, and then start predicting where you think the future technology trends will be, and then take actions, right? Next, I also want to talk about the many alternative paths to success, right? You know, I joined a great company. I joined and stayed for 24 years. That is a perfectly viable path. Some people join one great company and then join many different great companies. They move company to companies, right? But also there are other alternatives, right? Startups, entrepreneurship. I'd love to see in Malaysia more and more of these kinds of, our graduates going into such arenas. And then on adjacent or new fields, there is that element of as things are rapidly changing, you may be studying a particular field, perhaps you picked it 4 years ago, 3 years ago, but that field, what you had predicted will be a massive growth area that will give you a successful career, or growth, or financial success, or just happiness in a career, could be changing, right? And this is where look for adjacent or new fields where you can use the relevant skills. And going back to the learning trends, use those tools to understand where those new trends are, and if necessary, change, right? And last but not least, make sure that you enjoy the journey, right? There is while you're trying to figure out what the trends are, while MCO is difficult, while it's very tough for all of us to go through the pandemic, bear in mind that this is life, right? And we have to enjoy, learn to enjoy the journey as we make our way out of this crisis, right? So I'll end and leave you with a quote from one of our founders: "Don't be encumbered by history. Go off and do something wonderful." All right. Thank you very much. That is the end of my sharing today.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Suresh, for your insightful and awesome sharing session with us today. Despite of your busy schedule, you have your time with us, and we are very grateful for that, Mr. Suresh. Okay, this is my first question for you. Okay.
Sure.
Diversity of Intel workforce. We think about people development and how Intel would identify the right talent to work with Intel. And how about the people development with Intel? And all right, since we have unforeseen circumstances, pandemic COVID-19, what do you think about that? How we are going to sustain the people development with Intel?
Okay, thank you, Mori. I believe that under these kinds of situations, people development becomes even more important than during normal times. As I mentioned to you, historically, when I joined the design center, we had 100 engineers, and many had joined with a diploma in engineering. It was we were an even younger country back then. We were looking for R&D talent, and we started like that. But over the years, many of these people, we actually funded their bachelor's degree. So the company actually creates a space where you can work and also study at the same time. We encourage our managers and our leaders to provide that flexibility, right? Whether it's classes in the evenings, classes on weekend. I believe UTM is one of the universities we have worked together to put a curriculum for R&D, and many of our students actually go, besides the diploma holders who ultimately became bachelor's degree holders and so on. Today, we actually have a program for masters, right? Where we take our graduate trainees, they can sign up, and during the initial 2 years, they are actually doing a combination of working and studying. And they graduate with a master's after they join us. So this is where we are trying to close the gap. Again, the other aspect of this is like for things like LinkedIn Learning and many other tools, Intel actually pays. It's free to the employees, right? There are subscriptions. If you go to your manager and you say, oh, I would like to develop myself, we actually provide that facility. And the other aspect we're very proud of is also we have a teach the trainer method, meaning to say, when somebody has expertise in an area and has gone and learned something, they will go to a chalk talk and actually teach the next generation, right? So we are creating those platforms. The other aspect of this is we look at the incoming pipeline from the universities, like internships, right? We work very closely with the universities. Last year we had a unique program we put together with the Ministry of Education called an MOE Elite Program. We had the first 100 students, right? We picked from the top, I believe, 6 public universities, the top students to go through a special program in VLSI. If you look at the pandemic, you would expect that this year we may not be doing this program. But the reality is we've gone from 100 last year. This year's intake is 120. And the welcoming speech for the event had to be done virtually. When we do a team building, the classes for the 10 weeks is actually all happening online, right? The students are back in their hometowns even. We actually have a capability to actually securely ship laptops to these both interns and engineers. So if today my laptop breaks down, there's a way for IT to send something, a replacement to our houses and get us back online. Right? So we're adapting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Suresh, for your response. Okay, we have questions from our audience. Okay, all right. From Medicarium, what are the changes that may occur in educational systems after COVID-19?
Okay, I believe perhaps Prof. Rafiq would be a more qualified to answer this, but I will answer.
Your point of view, sir.
So what are the changes, right? I actually feel that besides the universities providing foundational knowledge, for example, universities will always have to teach the students, for example, in engineering, maths, physics, electrical and electronic engineering, software, all of those aspects. I believe there will also be aspects where you can learn online. When there's a quick technology trend, the aspects of being able to subscribe to a service where you will complement your knowledge of the fundamentals through online learning, that is going to be a big thing. It will also be interesting. I know that schools have reopened. We have started to bring people back on site, but the learning we got from the fact that we can do things online, I believe, will create some new services. Because in many cases, the inability for somebody to move, for example, if I wanted to do a PhD and the university is in Kuala Lumpur, right, and I would have to manage the situation with family to go there. If this was available online, it actually means that I can pursue something that today is difficult for me to do, but that platform now makes things possible.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Suresh. All right. Okay. In terms of your sustain in your current business, of course, Intel is prominent with the microprocessor or something like that. Okay. Then, what do you think about in future? What can you predict, or what is the how Intel's going to sustain your business, your current business, or maybe you're going to penetrate something like a new business, for example?
Yeah. So one of the things our CEO often mentions is the total available market for computers is at a certain trajectory. But if you expand beyond, for example, 5G networks, right? So we as 5G rolls out, Intel actually is a component at the both the edge, the network, and the data centers, right? If you look at data today, it's all digital, right? Even your voice is digitized and transported through the exchange. It's no longer the old telephony. It's a digital exchange. And in all of those areas, high performance compute at lower power is a fundamental building block, right? And this is where we see as we go towards a world where data is everywhere, we are building chips in AI, we're building chips in networking, we're building chips in memory. We are also investing big in security because we realize that being able to do transactions securely, being able to interact with you, where if we decide that only two parties can see the data that is being transmitted, then the ability to protect the data from the edge all the way to the cloud and back to the other user is an opportunity, right? So we've actually got a 6-pillar approach, right, across many areas to grow our business in the future. So definitely not just computers, right? Even automotive, right? So some of the chips that we have shown you, it's already being adopted by a lot of manufacturers, like autonomous driving. We have made investments where the vision processing chips that help in ADAS, right, the assisted driving capabilities, all of those things, we actually have IP and we're building chips.
Okay. Thank you. This is from Ayanda J. Post-COVID-19 and online-related tinggi suddenly becoming extremely important. How this affect Intel and Intel's view in hiring new employees? Good questions.
Okay, very good question. So I now business is always unpredictable. Can I commit and say that we'll hire X hundred by next year? I don't know. But what we feel is when Intel is enabling data, right? Intel is involved in moving data from end to end securely. So when we see things moving online, we expect actually business and opportunity to grow. And when business and opportunities for the company grows, then what we need is talent to create products, to create services in order to deliver to those opportunities. So I actually see this the potential to would be to hire more rather than less, right? So I'm optimistic that as
Yeah.
things move online, that the opportunities for Intel are even more boundless.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Suresh, for your kind response. Okay. All right. Okay. That's it. The questions from the audience. There are no more questions. I believe they have something in mind.
Mhm.
Okay. It's okay. But then, so far so good, Mr. Suresh. And thank you again for for our viewers, because we have a large number of viewers for our webinar Captain of Industry today, and we appreciate our audience for being for your passion and for your attention with our session today. All right, please wait to our upcoming webinar with our next Captain of Industry in future. Please activate audience to get your reminder on your Facebook for our upcoming webinar. And with that, I would like to invite Yang Berbahagia Datuk, our Dean, for his closing remarks for today. Over to you, Datuk.
Thank you so much, Murni, for chairing the session. And thank you to our guest speaker today, Mr. Suresh Kumar Perabala, for accepting our invitation. That's number one. And thank you again for answering that question from the audience on behalf of me. You know,
one of the things I've learned is when there's an expert in the room, you defer to the expert. You are the education expert, so I was a bit careful. Like, do I answer or do I let you answer this question?
Suresh, you have answered the question with precision, a precision that only an Intel engineers can do. Yeah, so thank you so much for answering that question on my behalf. It is a great honor to have you, Suresh. And very interesting sharing session. A lot of things that I didn't know about Intel, but now I have a lot of information from the history of Intel in Penang. You know what happened in 1975. Well, that's interesting indeed. You know, and then up until now, you are at the helm of the Intel Corporation in Penang. Yeah, we wish you all the best, all the success in managing all the resources that you have. Certainly interesting to know that you have lots and lots of research engineers working there at Intel under your command. So to you again, thank you so very much. And to all our viewers around the globe, thank you for watching UTM Engineering Captain of Industry. And we have a lot more session for you in the future. So stay tuned. Until then, bye for now. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.